My new favorite book. Anybody ever see this? Go Givers Sell More. How many of you guys are in business? Well, I know you guys are. What business are you in, sir? Construction. For yourself? Yeah. Awesome. Go Givers Sell More. Selling is the most honorable, dignified, and spiritual profession there is, as bad as a reputation as it gets. Because selling is about helping people. It's about solving problems. A good salesperson solves problems. And there's nothing, the way I look at it, there's no more problems more fundamental than the problems we have with our bodies. We all got these bodies, but we don't know how to run them. Nobody tells us how to run our bodies. So we end up going to mechanics, and the mechanics for our bodies say to us, I can't help you, but you still got to come to me once a month, and I got to just make sure that I can't help you. What if your plumber said that to you? I can't fix your toilet, but I'm going to come back once a month just to make sure I can't fix your toilet. You say, I'm going to get a new plumber. You went to a mechanic. He said, I can't fix your car, but you still got to come back to me once a month. I'm still not going to fix your car. I just got to make sure I can't fix your car. We get a new mechanic. But for some reason, when it comes to our bodies, we think it's okay to go to the doctor every month or every 6 weeks or every 2 months, wherever we go, and the doctor says, well, I can't make you better, but here's some more pills, and you just keep taking them, come back and see me every 4 to 6 weeks. Well, do you ever notice how when you cut yourself, you get a shaving cut your finger, scrape your knee, what happens to that scrape a month later, a week later, a couple weeks later? It gets well. Wait a minute. Without a doctor? Scrape just heals up? Are you kidding me? Cut yourself shaving. Do you run to the doctor because you got to get some medicine because you cut yourself shaving and he's going to get you better? No, it heals on itself. So something must be in there. It's healing, right? So obviously, hidden in plain sight, there's a healing mechanism built into the body. But on the other hand, we seem to be getting sicker. Our bodies seem to be falling apart. We seem to be degenerating, at least many of us. In fact, chronic degenerative disease accounts for trillions of dollars in healthcare costs and untold amount of misery. So on the one hand, we got this healing mechanism, this intelligence that's built into the body that heals our cuts and heals our scrapes. And on the other hand, we're falling apart. So clearly there's a disconnect. Clearly there's a problem. And I will present to you that the problem is not built into our bodies. It's simply based on bad and on wrong and on non-information. We've got bad information, we got wrong information, and we got no information. We don't know how to run our bodies. We know more about our home appliances than our bodies. We can program our VCRs and our microwave ovens, but we can't program our bodies. How many of you guys know what your gallbladder is, where your gallbladder is, what your pancreas, where your pancreas is? Of course, if we don't know what our gallbladder is and the doctor says, well, we're going to have to take that silly little thing out and you're going to be fine, we're going to say, okay. Because we don't know. Well, you're a smart man. You wouldn't do it. But a lot of people do. 500,000 people a year have their gallbladders removed because the doctor told them, you don't need that silly little thing. It's just causing you agony. Do you think God put any silly little things in your body? No. Put any extras in there? Any spares in there that you don't need? Of course not. It flies in the face of common sense to think that you can take an organ out of your body and be better off for it. It flies in the face of common sense to think that you can poison your body with a prescription, and I said the word poison consciously and intentionally, and somehow be better for it. If your heart is beating too fast, you know what they do? They take a plug and they stick it in the socket in the wall and they electrocute your heart to calm your heart down. Now, who in God's name thinks that's a good thing to do to your body? Yet this is what our medical model is about. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not going to rip on doctors, because I have a lot of friends who are doctors. It's not about individual doctors who are kindly and well-meaning. Not about individual pharmacists like myself or the pharmacist next door. How ironic is it that we're talking about all this right next to the pharmacy? It's not about the individual pharmacists. It's not about the individual doctors. It's about the model, the paradigm. The model that says that your body is inevitably doomed. And all we can do is stave off your demise. This is what the model says, that you are doomed. There's nothing we can do. In fact, if I were to sit here and tell you that there was a cure for something, I could go to jail. Because the model says there are no cures. Well, guess what? I agree. I say there are no cures. You'll never hear me say the word cure because cure is about magic. I say reversal because reversal is about logic. If you're going in this direction and you want to go in that direction, you just do a U-turn. It's as simple as that. The problem we have with our health challenges today are classified as chronic, which means long-term, degenerative diseases. If you have a degenerative disease and you want to reverse it, all you got to do is figure out how to go regenerative. There ain't no magic here. It's simply becoming regenerative rather than degenerative. You see, your body's kind of like a business. You're in business, right? In business, you're always spending money, right? You're always making money, hopefully. You're spending money and you're making money. It doesn't matter how much you're spending. It doesn't matter how much you're making. What matters is your bottom line. You can spend $1 million. If you make $1,001,001, your bottom line is in the black. If you make $1 million, but you lose $1,001,001, your bottom line is in the red. Well, your body's much like a business. When we're sick, we're spending more than we're making. Spending in the body is breaking down. Making money in the body is building up. We're always spending money. Our body is always spending money. Our body is always breaking down. Even little kids are always breaking down. The problem isn't the breaking down. The problem is when we're sick, we're breaking down faster than we're building up. Our body/business is in the red. If you are sick, your body is in the red. You get the metaphor here? If you're healthy and strong and vital, your body is in the black. What we got to figure out is how to make more money than we're spending, how to build more than we're breaking down, how to build faster than we're breaking down. Now, by the way, there's a fancy word, a fancy scientific word that we have for breaking down. Fancy scientific word for when the body breaks down, but we don't say spending, that's a business metaphor. We don't say breaking down, that's colloquial. The fancy scientific word for breaking down in the body, anybody know? No? It's fancy. Fancy. Wouldn't use it in common language. It's called catabolism. I'm going to write this on the board here. This is the fancy scientific word for breaking down. Catabolism. Breaking down. Catabolism. The fancy scientific word for in the black is, oh, shucks. I got to use a different color. Wouldn't that have been cool if I could use black? All right, I got to use blue. Imagine it's black. Anabolism. Fancy scientific word. Anybody hear anabolic steroids? Remember when back in the, when you were a kid, people were taking anabolic steroids. Anabolism means to build up. Catabolism means to break down. I'll bet nobody could tell me what the word is for the bottom line. This is spending. This is earning, we'll say. I'll bet nobody can tell me the fancy scientific word for bottom line. Anybody? You've all heard it before. Catabolism plus anabolism. Spending plus earning equals your bottom line. Catabolism plus anabolism equals metabolism. Anybody hear that term? Your metabolism is your bottom line. If you're breaking down, you got a negative metabolism. If you're sick, you got a negative metabolism. If you're healthy and strong and vital, you got a positive metabolism. All we got to do if we are sick is to figure out how to go from spending too much, spending more than we're earning, to earning more than we're spending. It's as simple as that. That's not complicated, is it? That's the whole point of this whole thing, is that health is simple. It is not complicated. It's not fancy schmancy science. You don't need an 8-year medical degree. In fact, if you have an 8-year medical degree, it's probably going to confuse you, and you're probably not going to understand it. And that's why we have more doctors per capita than any other culture in the history of mankind, and we are simultaneously the most obese, the most diabetic ridden, the most cancer-ridden, the most degenerative, the most autoimmune filled. Do you know this is the second year in a row, for the first time in history, that American longevity has declined? Never happened before. Didn't happen in the midst of the Great Depression. Didn't happen in the middle of the great flu epidemic of 1918. Never happened before. This is the second year in a row that the medical model should be ashamed of itself. How dare it tell us how great it is? Well, I'll tell you how dare it tell it how great it is. It's like that old joke, which you guys might not have heard of, but a guy named Emo Phillips. Anybody ever hear of Emo Phillips? Nobody? How come you guys are so quiet? I feel like I'm the only guy sitting up here talking. What's going on here, you guys? Come on now. Am I speaking Japanese or something? What's up? Come on. Cheer up. So this guy, Emo Phillips, he was a comedian. You ever heard of Emo Phillips? No? You should Google Emo. You should YouTube Emo Phillips someday. He's really funny. E-M-O Phillips. Anyway, he has this funny way of talking. Back in the 80s, he goes, I used to think my brain was my most important organ. And then I realized what was telling me that. No. Did you get that joke? No, come on. Where's the Beyond Tangy Tangerine? These people need some BTT. Let's get them loaded up. Maybe we need some IV. Come on, isn't that funny? I used to think my brain was my most important organ, and then I realized all the time. It's like we think the medical model is so wonderful. Well, how do we know? Because they tell us all the time how wonderful they are. It doesn't matter that we're all obese and diabetic and cancer, and we don't know how the heck to take care of our bodies. And this is the second year in a row longevity has dropped. By the way, the word doctor, does anybody know what that means? Where it comes from? What's that means? To teach, like doctrine. A doctor is a teacher. This is what a doctor should be, is a teacher, to teach us how to take care of our bodies. The job of a good healthcare professional is to get himself out of the way so you can take care of yourself. The job of a good healthcare professional is to make himself irrelevant. If I do my job correctly, I'm not even going to be necessary anymore. People call me up, and I do consults on the phone sometimes. And people say, how much do you charge? I'm not going to charge you anything to give you information, to tell you stuff, to teach you things. I can't tell you. I don't own the information. How am I going to charge you to teach you? But we made medicine into a commodity. We made it into a business. So it's in the nature of business to keep customers, not to lose customers. So we have a business model, a business model that forces us, compels us by its very nature to stay sick against the body's nature and against the body's wisdom. So health is simply a matter of going anabolic from catabolic. But in order to understand how to do this, we got to know how we go catabolic in the first place, how we break down in the first place. Why is it that our body breaks down? Why is it that we know that our body is healing and we know that our body has a built-in regenerating mechanism that we witness every time we cut ourselves? Do you know every time you break your bone, the bone is stronger at the point of the break? Not only does the body heal, it heals better. It heals stronger than it was before. This amazing system that we have should always be running perfectly, but what happens? We know it doesn't happen that way, so what goes wrong? Well, tragically, it all begins at birth. What happens at birth? When a human baby is born, comes out of the birth canal, see a lot of moms in this room, you know what I'm talking about, baby comes out of the birth canal. What happens to the baby as he's coming out of the birth canal? He gets covered with a coat of bacteria. Right? Moms, you know what I'm talking about? The baby gets coated with a covering of bacteria. That bacteria go into the baby's mouth and into the baby's nose, and they go down the baby's esophagus, and they go into the baby's digestive tract, and they make a home in the baby's intestine. And those bacteria live in the intestine, and then the baby gets breast milk, and the breast milk, you know, I forgot to turn my phone off, actually. Did you guys turn your phones off? The bacteria go into the baby's intestine, and then the breast milk comes and feeds the bacteria. And from that point forward, those bacteria become that baby's and that child's and that teenager's and that adult's and us, our best health friends. Those bacteria digest our food for us. Those bacteria make vitamins for us. Those bacteria clear out toxins for us. Those bacteria talk to our cells and tell our cells what to do and how to grow. Those bacteria process poisons so the poisons can be eliminated out of the body. Those bacteria control every single aspect of our health. However, in order for those bacteria to get into the baby's mouth and into the baby's nose and then ultimately to make it into the baby's intestine, they have to be in the mom's birth canal in the first place. That means the mom has to be healthy enough to have those good bacteria. By the way, what are the names of that? What do we call those good bacteria that live in the intestine? Do you know? Probiotics, exactly. Those probiotic bacteria are supposed to be bequeathed to the baby from the mom. But that presumes that the mom has those bacteria. If the mom doesn't have those bacteria, the baby won't have those bacteria. The bacteria getting into the intestine of the baby presumes that the baby is going down the birth canal in the first place. 33% of babies don't make it through the birth canal because they're coming out cesarean. And in this room, many of you were out cesarean, probably more than 33%, because they didn't know about this when we were born, when people our age were born. I'm saying our age, 50s to 80s. It's a little bit better now, but still 33%. Now they have voluntary cesarean sections. So having those bacteria get into the intestine, remember these bacteria are very fundamental to health, presumes a healthy mom, presumes a healthy birth, or that is a birth through the birth canal, and it presumes that breast milk is going into the baby to support and nurture and sustain those bacteria. And we know 33% of babies aren't breastfed. And in this room, once again, even more of us were not breastfed because we didn't realize how important it is, those of us who were born from, say, 1940 to 1980 or so, in that time span. So right away, for the vast majority of us, we're already sick and we were just born. We just came out of the birth canal. Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse, okay? Okay, because one of the jobs of these bacteria is to help us process our food. For a lot of reasons. They themselves process food. They talk to our intestine to help the intestine process food. They communicate to the liver. They communicate to the other digestive organs. When the baby doesn't have the good bacteria, the probiotics, because he was born cesarean, or he came out, his mom wasn't healthy enough, or he wasn't breastfed, or he wasn't breastfed long enough, all of these reasons, now the baby doesn't process food correctly. Now the baby doesn't have enough energy. So the baby starts to get cranky a lot because he's low energy. So we do something, for the most part, not all of us, but for the most part, we do something as parents, as moms, or dads. We do something to give that baby energy, basically to shut the baby up. We give it a special kind of food that will give the baby a lot of energy so he's happy for a little bit, and we can go to sleep, or we can do what we need to do. Hello, it's called sugar. In the form of fruit juice, in the form of apple juice, in the form of Gerbers, in the form of all the foods we eat. Some of us are smart enough not to do that, but for the most part, we give them applesauce, and we give them fruit juice, and we give them pear juice, and all the things we give our baby. And that keeps the baby quiet for a little bit, so he's not colicky. By the way, colicky comes from the word colon, which means intestinal problem, which means probiotic problem, which means a digestive problem. So we give the baby sugar where he's happy for a little bit. His blood sugar starts to rise, and he's got a little bit of energy. He's perky. Sometimes he's too perky, and he's bouncing off the walls, and that happens also. And then the body does something very, very interesting. You see, sugar is very intense stuff for the body, very explosive. Sugar is explosive. You know, if there's a fire in a sugar factory, that's a major fire. They have to bring in fire departments from all over the area to put the fire out at the sugar factory because sugar is very explosive. You ever get a sugar burn? No, never bake a pastry burn or something? Sugar burns hot. It's really hot stuff, right? You don't want put a teaspoon of sugar in a frying pan and watch what happens. It burns ugly and it burns hot, and that's not good for the body. So when the blood sugar goes up in the body, that's an emergency. That represents a danger. That represents a lot of heat. That represents, it's like your computer. Your computer doesn't want a lot of heat, and your body doesn't want a lot of heat. So when the blood sugar goes up, that represents an emergency. So temporarily, your kid is happy. Maybe he's bouncing off the walls a little bit. To the body, that represents an emergency. So the body has a system for pulling that sugar down. In fact, a very important hormone, chemical, gets released to pull that sugar out of the blood. Anybody know what that hormone is called? It's called insulin. Very good. So insulin comes out, it pulls the sugar out, and now the blood sugar drops. Now the baby's cranky again. Now we're talking babies now 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 or 5 years old at this point. Baby's cranky. The child's cranky. So what do? Well, we know what works to keep him from being cranky, right? We give him a popsicle, or we give him an apple, or we give him apple juice, or we give him pear juice, or we give him some ice cream, or we give him some applesauce. We give him all the foods. We give him even bread, or toast, or soda pop. This is what our kids are living on. All of us, unless you had very wise parents, some of you may have had very wise parents, but for the most part we didn't. God love them, they didn't know. And so they got the applesauce and the ice cream and the foods that made the baby happy. Well, that raises the blood sugar once again. The insulin comes to the rescue, pulls the blood sugar down. Now the child is cranky. Now the child has problems concentrating. You give him some more sugar, and on this goes. I call this the high blood sugar, low blood sugar roller coaster. Up and down and up and down. This is all following the disruption at the level of the digestive system, which itself is following the disruption of the bacterial implanting at the level of the birth canal and breast milk. So you got birth canal, breast milk, high blood sugar, low blood sugar, roller coaster. By the time the kid is now 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, he's got a condition that used to only happen to adults. It's called diabetes, except now we call it type 2 diabetes. Anybody ever heard of the term type 2 diabetes? Now, what did it used to be called? Anybody know what type 2 diabetes used to be called? Diabetes. No, it used to be called adult onset diabetes. Anybody remember that term? You don't hear that anymore because they changed the name. Why did they change the name from adult onset to type 2? Because kids get it. Exactly. Because now children have it, and even if they're not diagnosed as diabetic, they're pre-diabetic or they're hypoglycemic. And now the kid is maybe a teenager. Now, when you're a teenager, you can do a lot of things. You can smoke cigarettes and go play football the next day. You can go out drinking and you can go to work the next day. You can go out drinking and go back to school the next day. I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff. Your body's strong. It's resilient. You don't notice these things. So these things kind of go under the radar. Now, once the blood sugar goes up and down and up and down, this represents an emergency to the body. High blood sugar is dangerous to the body. Low blood sugar is dangerous to the body. So both of these are emergencies to the body. The body has a special emergency control system, and it's located in 2 little glands that are right here, somewhere in the middle of your body, right where your bottom meets the top, sort of towards the back. Not quite, but you're very close. The kidneys are known as the renals. That's the technical name. So these 2 glands sit on top of the renals. They're called the adrenals. They sit on top of the renals. Ad means on top of. So they sit on top of the renal system. The adrenals are your stress management glands, and they become very activated when you're under stress. And one of the most important stresses to the body is high blood sugar, and one of the most important stresses to the body is low blood sugar. So as you're going through this high blood sugar, low blood sugar roller coaster, which follows the probiotic issue because of the poor bacterial implantation or non-bacterial implantation at the level of birth, eventually the adrenals become involved, and they start to secrete a stress hormone. That stress hormone is called cortisol. Now, keep in mind now, we're talking a teenager now. We're talking in your early 20s now, and now you got high blood sugar, low blood sugar roller coaster, you're hypoglycemic, you got problems with your digestive system. See how bad this is? You're only a teenager. You're only 20. And now your cortisol is elevated. Cortisol gives you energy, but it also gives you causes problems sleeping. It gives you coffee energy. Cortisol is your body's natural coffee. It gives you jitteriness. It makes you anxious. It gives you anxiety. It causes depression. Do you know we have an epidemic of teenage suicide? Teenage Prozac. Teenagers are depressed today. I don't remember teenagers being depressed when we were young. Teenagers are depressed today. Well, it might have happened, but certainly they weren't on Prozac to the extent that they are today. They weren't committing suicide. We got a problem with childhood suicide today. And a lot of this has to do with this pattern. So by the time the kid is now in his 20s, his digestive system is messed up, his blood sugar is messed up, his stress system is messed up. But keep in mind, He's only in his 20s, and when we're in our 20s, we're in the bloom of our life, and the way nature has designed us is we can do we're like steel. We're like Supermen when we were kids. You guys remember this? It wasn't that long ago. Well, maybe it was, but it really wasn't that long ago when we could do anything, right? We were men of steel. Nothing could get us. Those were old people that got sick. That wasn't us. We could do whatever. We could smoke and we could drink, and it doesn't matter what we eat, and we're just great. And then all of a sudden something happens right around the age of 28. I call it hitting the wall. Right around, can you guys recall this? Hitting the wall. All of a sudden, things start to feel, oh, wait a minute. I can't go out. I don't feel so good. I can't go out drinking every night. I just don't feel that great. That's what the cumulative effect of the digestive problems that begin at birth, the blood sugar problems that ensue, and the cortisol issues that occur subsequent to the first 2 points. I call these 3 points, by the way, the triangle of disease. And this triangle of disease, these 3 points of bodily breakdown at the level of the digestive system, the blood sugar system, and the adrenal system. I want you to hear this because this is extremely important what I'm going to say now. These 3 points of the triangle of disease are underneath every single health challenge we have. Every one of them. Cancer, autoimmunity, skin diseases, heart disease, whatever. You name the health challenge, underneath it you will find 3 points of the 3 points of the triangle of disease. You will find a distressed cortisol system, you will find dysglycemia or messed up blood sugar, and it doesn't matter if you're diagnosed as a diabetic, and tweaked out digestive system. Why is this important? Because it says the key to reversing degeneration, to go from catabolism to anabolism, is to work at those 3 points. And you don't need any drugs to do it. And you don't need any doctor to do it. And you don't need any functional medicine, testing, diagnostic, anything that you can't do from the comfort of your own living room to address those 3 points at the triangle of disease. It is the most powerful health message you will ever hear if you're interested in taking care of your own health. I'll draw this on the board. Excuse me. I'll take your question in a sec. Did that make sense? Did I say anything complicated yet? Did I say anything fancy or scientific or medicine yet? It isn't scientific or medicine. And by the way, I didn't get to tell you about me. I hope that doesn't matter because, do you want to hear about myself? You do? You already heard. You want to hear it again? Oh, you want to hear it again? All right. I'll tell you in a sec. What was your question, ma'am? I'm sorry. Yes, I call this a triangle of disease. You're not going to find it in any books. You're not going to find it on the internet unless you see my talks. You're not going to find it anywhere because it's something that I saw from seeing thousands of patients. I noticed, literally thousands of patients I saw in my presentations and in my practice, I noticed everybody had these same things underneath all their illnesses. I call this the triangle of disease. Starts off with the digestive system. Works into the blood sugar system, and then the adrenals, which, by the way, are connected via what's called in biology an axis to the thyroid gland. The adrenal glands are your emergency energy glands. The thyroid gland is your regular energy gland. There's a relationship. When the adrenals are jacked up, constantly spiking emergency hormones, the thyroid will slow down. Anybody ever hear of a condition called hypothyroidism? Almost at least 10 of you, maybe more, have had this condition, whether you've been diagnosed or not. Maybe more, but at least 10 of you. The adrenal glands are they give you jittery coffee energy, so you can get out of a jam, so you can get out of a pickle when there's an emergency like low blood sugar or high blood sugar. Your thyroid gives you energy just when you're going about doing your daily business. When your adrenal glands are constantly stimulated, eventually the thyroid will slow down. It's like a compensation mechanism. Follow me with this? The compensation mechanism, lowering the thyroid, because the thyroid affects every other system in the body, the heart, the liver, the kidneys. You're going to love this one. The cholesterol. Nobody has a cholesterol problem. They got a thyroid problem. And only a brain-dead, biochemically ignorant medical professional will ever try to work here and not here if you have elevated cholesterol. Take that to your next doctor who tells you need to be on a statin drug. And if he has a problem, tell him to call Pharmacist Ben, and I'll teach him about the body. Hypothyroidism is the equivalent of elevated blood cholesterol. And it follows jacked up adrenal glands, dysglycemia, which means messed up blood sugar. By the way, I don't want you to get thrown off by fancy terms here. So dys means messed up, like dysfunctional, right? Gly, what does that mean? Sugar, glyce. And emia always means blood. Dys, messed up, sugar in the blood, dysglycemia. Okay? So don't even use the word diabetic. It's dysglycemia. That means messed up blood sugar, which follows digestive problems. Once the thyroid slows down, everything else happens. So if you have a heart problem, you got to work here. If you have a liver problem, you got to work here. If you have a kidney problem, you got to work here. If you have a cholesterol problem, you got to work here. Name your disease, name your health challenge. You got to work here. It all starts here. The beautiful thing about working here is you can do this yourself. The bad news is there's nothing your doctor can do about it. There's nothing your doctor can do for your adrenal glands. There's nothing your doctor can do for your thyroid. I love thyroid medicine. It's useless. It's a waste of time. Everybody who's on thyroid medicine knows that, but we still take it. Everybody on thyroid medicine knows it's useless, but we still take it. You know why it's useless? Because the problem isn't here. It's here and here and here. If you got rotting leaves, you don't work at the level of the leaf. You work at the soil. You work at the root. You work at the trunk. If you went to an arborist and he told you, said, I'm going to fix your tree, and he went and sprayed stuff on the leaf to get rid of the fungus, you'd think he was crazy. The problem isn't at the leaf level. It's at the soil level. It's at the nourishment level. Where the disease appears is not where the disease starts. It starts underneath. And in the case of the body, it's at the level of the triangle. So I'm going to show you how you address all this here in a second. Let me real briefly tell you how I got into this, how I got into talking about all this crazy nutrition stuff, traveling around the country, which I love doing. I love talking to people. There's nothing more gratifying than helping people. And that's why I said, go give or sell more, because it's the most gratifying, beautiful thing. I've been talking to a lady, an elderly woman. She's not even that elderly. She's 74. I don't consider that elderly. Does anybody consider that elderly? Right? The age for being old keeps moving up, I've noticed. Right? 74, she's not that old. And so anyway, I've been talking to her for Evelyn. I've been talking to her for a while, and she lives in Auburn. And this is the first time I've been out here in a long time. So I've been talking to her for a long time. It's heartbreaking to talk to her. She's got Parkinson's disease, right? And so I talked to her. I can't even talk to her on the phone because she has this really bad case. She trembles. She can't talk. And she sounds so sad, and she's so sweet. And sometimes I'll talk to her sister, and I try to explain to her sister what to do, but I'm on the phone. There's only so much you could do on the phone. So I said, finally, she calls me up one day. I said, Evelyn, I'm coming out to Sacramento. I'm going to come see you. I'm coming out to Roseville. Where do you live? Oh, I live in Auburn. It's real close. Fine. So I did a talk this morning, and then I went off to see Evelyn. I had never met the lady before. And I go in there. She lives in this. You guys, it's so cute out here. The little towns and she lives out on Old Airport Road in what is the name of the town she's in Auburn, I think you call it, right? So I went off the road, and I go up this little hill, and there's this little old creaky gate. I go in through the creaky gate, and there's this old chicken farm. She lives in this little chicken farm, and just her and her sister, and she's 74, her sister's 80, and poor Evelyn is in a wheelchair. And she comes out, and I'd never seen her before, and I looked at her, and immediately I knew what she needed. Immediately. I said, and she's shaking really, really bad. And I said, Evelyn, you're suffocating. And so I sat her down, I said, let's do some breathing. In 5 minutes, she stopped trembling. In 5 minutes of just breathing, it was praise God. Praise God. And the reason I'm telling you this is because when I left, I felt so blessed. I felt blessed. I was praising the Lord driving that I got to do that. And that's what this business allows you to do, and that's why I do what I do, and that's why I come out here to talk to you. If I change one life in this room, then maybe 90% of you will think Pharmacist Ben's full of crapola, okay? If 10% of you change your life, I will be the most blessed man on earth. And that's what this allows me to, that's what this business allows me to do. And I'm so grateful. I can't even begin to tell you how grateful I am to do this. And I'm going to do it till the day I die. I'll stand on every rooftop I can find and scream at the top of my lungs that we can be healthy. We can be strong. God gave us 120 years of vitality, of wonderful long living. There's no reason anybody should have anything less than a long, vital, fulfilled, beautiful, happy, healthy life. And that's my message, and that's why I do what I do, is because of what I got to experience with Evelyn. And I first started to see this when I was a pharmacist. I first started to see that I was a pharmacist, and I had gone into pharmacy school because I wanted to help people, but nobody was getting better. And I wasn't helping anybody. They were coming back. Kept coming back not only for more drugs, but for more potent drugs. And I realized that the reason people weren't getting any better because I wasn't giving them anything to get better. I was responsible for poisoning them. In pharmacy school, we study medicine as poison. And how can it possibly be, except in some reverse mirror world, where poison makes you better? How could that possibly happen? Poison is poison. It doesn't make you better. And I was the guy giving out the poison. So in pharmacy, as a pharmacist, I made it my mission to do something that back in 1986, nobody really knew. It was kind of a radical idea. I made it my mission to talk about nutrition. Why? Because in pharmacy school, we actually learned about nutrition. Pharmacy school, we studied vitamins and minerals as therapeutic tools. We studied the therapeutic value of vitamins and minerals, and we studied diseases as if they were deficiencies. We studied the nutritional deficiency nature of health challenges and diseases. And so in pharmacy school, I kind of had an idea that we could be using nutrients to heal the body. I was also an athlete. I was also a bodybuilder. And in athletics, we knew about nutrition because we're always looking for edges as an athlete. And we were a little hip to nutrition. So as a pharmacist, I started to do something that was kind of radical for the 1980s. I started to recommend nutrients to people. I started to suggest to people that when they came in and got their beta blocker drugs or their antihistamine drugs or the antibiotic drugs, maybe they want a little vitamin C with that antihistamine. Or maybe you want a little probiotic with that antibiotic. Or maybe you want a little magnesium with that calcium channel blocker. And oh my God, miracle of miracles, patients started to get better. They started to be able to wean themselves off their meds and take lower dose of their meds. And I was like, wow, and I'm only like in my 20s, I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. And I already kind of hip to nutrition, but it didn't, I was thinking to myself, I'm just a kid, I'm just a pharmacist. How come nobody knows about this? So I started to get a little more bold. And I started to say to people, why, instead of taking your magnesium with your calcium channel blocker, I said, why don't you take some magnesium instead of your calcium channel blocker? Why don't you take some vitamin C instead of your antihistamine? Or why don't you take some probiotics instead of your digestive remedy, your antispasmodic or whatever it was that they were taking? And sure enough, once again, patients got better. And little by little, I started to get a reputation at Kmart Pharmacy, of all places, where I was working, as the nutritional pharmacist. And then one day, as I was telling the story earlier, needless to say, Kmart was not thrilled with pharmacist Ben for suggesting nutritional supplements. And one day, my district manager came in and, with Mr. Osier, who I will always remember at every one of my talks, Ken Osier, he came in with the security guy, back, Ben, come on back, sit me in the back, and I don't know, I repeat, I think it's hysterical, so I tell it all the time. He goes to me, he says, Ben, you're just not cut out to be a Kmart pharmacist. And I just thought that was the funniest thing. No, he said, you're just not cut out to be Kmart material, is what he said to me. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever, but it wasn't funny because I was fired, but whatever. And I had to tell my wife, my ex-wife at the time, I had to tell her, and that was a whole scene, and whatever. Long story short, I was like, forget Kmart, I'm going to start my own pharmacy. And I did exactly that. I started a pharmacy called EconoComp Pharmacy, and all we did in my pharmacy, we had no drugs in my pharmacy, we only had nutrition, and I was in the skin business, I make skin products, and so I had skin stuff. EconoComp stood for Econo Compounding Pharmacy. And all we did was compounding is when you make the medicine. And you guys have heard of compounding pharmacy these days. But in the 1980s, nobody really heard of compounding pharmacy. It was a radical idea. And all we did was make medicine. And I would prescribe nutritional protocols and special skin protocols for specific people. And the State Board of Pharmacy would come in and inspect my pharmacy. And they'd be like, where's your drugs? I said, there's no drugs here. We're a licensed pharmacy, officially licensed by the state of Colorado. But there were no drugs in Econocomp Pharmacy. It took them about 3 minutes to inspect my pharmacy because there's nothing there to inspect. And I was fine with it. And little by little, I started to get a reputation in Colorado, in Denver, for being a nutritional pharmacist, for helping people with nutrition. And after doing this for a little bit, I started to realize, there is a healing modality here. There's a healing power here that nobody knows about. And this is, keep in mind, now we're talking like the early 1990s. There weren't health food stores everywhere. It wasn't like everybody knew about vitamins. It wasn't like you had people selling vitamins on TV and people on the radio. There was no internet. I mean, it was kind of a weird thing. You were still a health nut if you were still doing vitamins. And this was kind of an idea, a radical idea. Not only was I doing vitamins and nutrients, but I was a healthcare professional, a licensed, registered pharmacist doing this. So it was kind of a radical idea, but I knew it was powerful. So I started to have people come to my lab. It was a pharmacy/laboratory. I'd have people starting to come in, and I would do little talks. I'd have a little table set up in the middle, and a couple people would come in once a week, once a month or so, and people would come around. We talk about nutrition, we talk about health challenges, etc. And little by little, it started getting bigger. I started talking for 20 people, and then 40 people, and then 60 people. Pretty soon, I was talking for 100 people and 120 people. And this is like, by now, we're talking 1995, 1996, 1997, and we're doing some talks, and we're helping a lot of people. And one day, I was working in my pharmacy, and I get a tape in the mail. And I look at the tape. Dead doctors don't lie. Right? Remember that? You remember those tapes that came out, right? So I got this tape, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And I didn't think anything of it, so I just stuck it in a drawer, right? A week later, I get another tape in the mail. Dead Doctors Don't Lie. What the heck is this? Another tape. So I put it in the drawer. I didn't think anything. Every week for the next 2 months, I got tapes. Dead Doctors Don't Lie. Dead Doctors Don't Lie. Do you remember this? Anybody remember this back in the 1990s? Somebody had bought millions of these tapes and just sent them out. And I kept getting them. And then one day, I just decided I was going to take this tape and stick it in the machine, in my tape machine, and see what it was all about. And I put the tape in, and 1 second into listening to it, I am completely blown away. Because the guy on this tape is saying exactly what I had been saying for 10 years. He is talking like a pharmacist. He's talking about nutritional deficiencies causing diseases. He's talking about selenium and glucosamine, and you don't need to be sick. You're missing micronutrients and food, soil depletion, and all the things we talked about in pharmacy school, and I've been talking about. I'm like completely floored, and I started listening to this tape over and over and over again. I started incorporating these ideas into my talk and just falling in love with this guy, Dr. Wallach, and his message. And this is, we're talking 1997 now, 1998. And one day I'm working out in the gym, and I happen to mention to my buddy, Russ, I tell him, I was listening to this tape, Dead Doctors Don't Lie, and it's completely revolutionizing everything I do. This guy is unbelievable. And Russ, my buddy, he says, I know Dr. Wallach. He comes to Denver all the time. You want to meet him? I'm like, are you kidding me? Of course I want to meet this guy on the tape. I'd love to meet him. Now remember, there's no YouTube now. It's kind of a different world. You hear somebody on tape, you don't know anything about the guy. You're just amazed by him. You don't have the kind of access we have to people like we do today. And so sure enough, I'm working in the lab one day and look outside the window, and there's Russ, and there's Dr. Wallach, and walking up my stairs. And Dr. Wallach is probably about 56. He's younger than I am. He's 56 or something at the time. I guess about 56. Which I thought was really old. I'll never forget, because I was 36. Anyway, we start talking to Dr. Wallach, and we hit it off. And I can only imagine what Dr. Wallach was thinking, because I was repeating back to him everything he said on his tape, because I'd been listening to it so many times, and we became buddies. And before he left, he says to me, I have a radio show I do every day, and sometimes I can't do it. Would you like to be my fill-in host? Can you imagine this? I'm a 36-year-old kid. I'm like, are you kidding me? And I'm like I had already made it my mission to educate everybody about nutrition, and I'd already been doing it in a small way. And now this guy who my hero, my nutritional hero, this complete nutritional genius, says to me, do you want to do my radio show every day on the days when I can't do the show? Long story short, I ended up doing his radio show. Youngevity, the network marketing company, had just started. He had just begun it. He'd just begun it that year, maybe the year before. And so it was a very new company. There was probably maybe 500 people in the whole company. Now there's, I don't know if you probably know, there's probably 400,000 people in the company now. It's grown incredibly. And I became a speaker for the company, and I was the only pharmacist in the company. There were no medical professionals, and because it was a small company, I was like the big fish in a small pond kind of thing. And as the company grew, and it's grown incredibly, I've grown with the company. So the point today where now I do a lot of talks, I'm on the scientific advisory board, and it's a really big company. How many of you guys are involved in longevity? So it's a really big company. It went from this tiny little dinky company to being a really big company. And it didn't happen by coincidence. It did not happen because they're fancy schmancy marketers. It happened because the